Arcades may be a thing of the past, but we'll never forget our memories and experiences playing them growing up. I recently had the opportunity to sit down with a couple of individuals and talk to them about their experiences with arcades. Hope you guys enjoy. Arcades have definitely been a part of my life for a while. I would always go up to the local Quick Stop, it was called.
There was a place in Bristol, Connecticut,
Okay.
which is not too far from where I grew up, which had a place called Scooters.
Childhood memories at arcades for me depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about when I'm a really young little kid, it was at a place called Cameron's Arcade.
Arcades, alright, so my parents used to go to this variety store on Main Street. It was like it's like In and Out or some weird name like that.
Back when I was born in '85, so arcades were still a thing. Go to the pizza parlor. I used to go to the supermarket, Half Mark, which had an arcade like kind of in the corner.
So I remember going to the arcades pretty heavily was Chinatown Fair in New York City.
And Scooters was like a mini amusement park place that had mini golf, it had Lasertron, it had, or laser tag, or whatever you guys called it, yeah. And they had so many arcade games, and that was like probably the most experience that I had in the arcade.
And this was kind of bittersweet because it got me involved in the world of arcades, but it also kind of burnt me a little bit. And what I mean by that is, as a kid, I didn't have a lot of money. And I wasn't used to having to pay so much money to play video games. I had a Nintendo Entertainment System.
2 arcade machines, and one of them turns out to be like still one of my favorites. It's not going to be what you think. So the first one was Double Dragon. You'd be like, oh, that's the one, man, Double Dragon. But no, Rastan. They actually had a Rastan cabinet. And the reason why I liked it was because I was a little kid and it was so hard. And it was like Conan the Barbarian, the sword.
Right.
And the music was phenomenal.
It was pretty much the main arcade I went to because me and my friends, we played Counter-Strike for the computer, but we were on like a team, and a lot of our team lived in either in Manhattan or Long Island or Jersey, and we were in Connecticut, so we would all take a train into Manhattan and then we'd go to the LAN centers in Queens. So while we were going, we would compete playing in Counter-Strike and all these tournaments. We would always go to Chinatown Fair before and after.
The laundromat would have arcades. Pretty much any place you could think of, some kind of restaurant would always have some kind of machine, just to like, while you're waiting for your food, just to get some, pop in a quarter, play a game.
I wasn't used to slapping in quarters to get an extra life or to move on, so it was a little bittersweet, but it got me enough to where I ended up keep going and loved it and started going to the arcade all the time. And when I got into high school, if we consider that a childhood memory, I definitely was going to a place called Nickel Nickel all the time in Huntington Beach, across the street from an amazing swap meet. Ricky and I would go there all the time, and video games were cheap there. And even funnier is a lot of the really classic arcade games, well, those were usually free at Nickel Nickel.
Arcade opened up. I was like 10 years old. My mother would drop me off. I'd be there all day.
My school had birthday parties at Scooters, so it became like a thing, like where people would just go, yeah, like whose birthday party was coming up, so I could go to Scooters and play some Mortal Kombat or play, like Killer Instinct. Or
we would always go there, and Chinatown Fair was like a mecca for fighting games, which is kind of what I've been always playing my whole life.
First one I played, it was at the Pathmark I was saying. There was an arcade there, Superman, because I remember the first one I played. So I remember the Superman theme song playing and just popping in the corner, flying around, hitting like meteors and stuff. And then Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2 was a big thing. Also at the beach, there was a big arcade at the beach I used to go to. So I would play Street Fighter 2. That's where I first played Mortal Kombat.
And the last experience, like real arcade experience that I had, as far as like when I was a kid, I would go visit my grandfather when he was still alive, and we used to drive down south to Florida where he lived. And they had signs to this place called South of the Border, and you would see these signs, south of the border, south of the border, you know, fireworks, blah blah blah. And I never thought anything of it. I was like, all right, it's a tourist trap, whatever. I was like, I don't know, 11, 12, whatever age I was, and that was the first time I got to play, I think, Mortal Kombat and maybe Killer Instinct as well.
And that's where I first saw Mortal Kombat, the original one. And I would try to get quarters from my mom and let me go up there and get some candy and play Mortal Kombat. And yeah, I remember the first time I saw Scorpion take off his mask and do a fatality. It was like, whoa, what is this?
Scorpion win. Flawless victory fatality.
That was the first game, yeah, right? 12-year-old kid playing Mortal Kombat. It was amazing. It blew my mind.
It was probably the spine rip with Sub-Zero. Yeah, that's one of the easier ones to do. So like, there would always be like a little crowd, and I was what, 7 or 8 when Mortal Kombat came out. So yeah, just seeing that little spine dangling was like, whoa, what's going on?
It was so crazy. It was like the talk of the neighborhood, and you know, how did you do it? We're trying to talk to the older kids because they knew the game better than us. They would play that.
All the fatalities meld into one. But yeah, like Johnny Cage with the uppercut and the head coming off. That's a classic.
And you know, there was no internet, so you either had to find out from somebody who knew how to do it, or pray that it was in GamePro or EGM back in the day.
Right. To play those like fighting games with like my like tight-knit close friends from like the internet, we became like really good friends over those arcades. So they share like a really special place in my heart.
My favorite arcade cabinet by far has to be Sunset Riders. No, I wouldn't say this would necessarily have to be like a dedicated Sunset Riders cabinet. This is just the cabinet that I always grew up playing. I know most people tend to go towards Turtles or Simpsons, which I love, but for Sunset Riders, it did something different for me.
Street Fighter 2 as well, a lot of the fighters. Yeah, just a lot of the local stores like that, and then going to Milford Rec, it was called, and that was the big arcade. They would have Turtles and Killer Instinct. This is the first time I played that there. That was a really fun game.
I had a few times in Milford, and unfortunately it shut down. And you know, when that happened, it kind of like the machines just weren't being fixed anymore, so they were half broken. And it kind of like slowly, you start to see less and less games or less new games. But at the time of its peak, it was really cool to go to. Actually, that's the first place I played Power Stone, because they had a Power Stone cab. Power Stone I really liked. They had Star Wars Trilogy Arcade, which was really cool from Sega.
Not just because the arcades, a lot of them, you know, they're 2 players, so you share it with a friend.
Right.
And it's just really special. And I really like fighting games.
Especially fighting games, that's what really gravitated me to the arcades. But just walking around, just hearing like the track screens and the ambience and everything, just really cool.
There's a restaurant. Like everywhere had arcade machines.
Right, restaurants, I was gonna say pizza places.
Yeah, it wasn't like arcades were exclusively only for places like Scooters. You could go to like restaurants. There was a place in Waterbury, Connecticut called Scoreboard, and they specialized in. It was like a place that you would go like to watch sports and stuff, like a bar. But they also had a restaurant, and they had a game room, and they had like NBA Jam, so I would play NBA Jam. And I would go to these places exclusively to get food, but also to get like arcade experience. So
the Varsity Club, which was way better than Chinatown Fair, it was like this massive like 3-story place.
Play a lot of pinball. Yeah, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Pinball. You don't have it here. That's alright.
It gave me part of something that was a big part of my childhood, and that was Western themed video games, or anything really Western themed. Now myself, when I was younger, obviously didn't have any nostalgia towards Western or Texas or any sort of cowboy history, but growing up, my dad was actually a cowboy. So Western theme and Western movies and Western talk was something that was huge in my household.
Mom actually worked at the bowling alley a few doors away from Milford Rec, and I would walk up there even if I didn't have any money, and I watched the other kids play. And it was just cool experience to see these games.
There's always a little sense of wonder. You're like, what am I gonna put my quarter in now? Is it gonna be a fighting game? Is it gonna be a driving game, a shooting game? You know, there's so much variety, which is really cool.
Killer Instinct is like, that's my holy grail, like what I want more than anything, game. I love it so much, I don't know why. Because it's like Street Fighter, but with like crazy cool characters. It's not really like Street Fighter, but it does have the same Hadouken motion inputs.
Go in and there's just this like room full of arcade machines, just like, and it's just such a different atmosphere and world when you go into an arcade machine like area. Like, if you just like, it's just so zen.
Yeah. I remember playing Primal Rage with Dave. I remember playing, pretty much when I would go there, all I would play is light gun games and the fighting games, because that's what me and Dave, we both liked, so I remember playing a lot of those.
So to be able to go to arcades and see this video game where it was very Western themed, yet 4 players, yet really fun, yet exciting, was a big deal for me, because when I was younger, again, I related Western to a lot more old school and kind of my dad's thing, and maybe even a little boring at times. And now growing up, that has completely changed for me, and I love Western stuff. But Sunset Riders stapled itself as a kid as a big thing, as a part of my childhood, and now growing up, it's fast forwarded and good thing. The game has stood the test of time. It's a Konami game, it's 4 players, it has some amazing quotes, and it's an all-around amazing time, and an amazing arcade cabinet.
Just going out with your friends and playing the arcades, playing some fighters, and you know, waiting your next turn, you put your quarter up on the machine and you're like, hey, up next, I want to play, you know, Street Fighter or whatever, and see how good I can do.
Sounds and all the, everything is just so bright and loud, and I think it's almost exhausting in a way, but like growing up with arcade machines and going and seeing them, you got used to the noise and you were okay with it. Like growing up as a kid in the 80s and 90s, like you grew up with these sounds in your head, just kind of bouncing around. And so going to the arcade was just like an experience. It wasn't just like, I'm going to play video games. It was like an experience. Putting the quarter in the machine, playing the game, sitting there enjoying it. It was just, there's just something so sweet about arcade.
And I've been to a few barcades. There's one in New Haven, and they have, you know, Simpsons and a lot of pinball games, and that's really cool that you can go down there and enjoy those games still. And it's, you know, keeping up on these machines. They're a lot older and they break, and some people don't know how to fix them, so they ended up junking them or whatever.
You go to St. Mark's in New York, so the barcade St. Mark's is more fighting game oriented. So it has, you know, the Marvel vs. Capcom, X-Men Street Fighter, Street Fighter Third Strike.
Now that I'm older, I have to admit, I don't go to arcades nearly as much as I would like. I'd say I go maybe once every 3 months. I normally gather up my kid, a few of his friends, we go have some pizza, we have a fun time, give him a bunch of quarters and let him see what it's like to play a video game where your lives count and you have to put money back in if you die.
And I think that's kind of replicated over the years, because now you have these barcades popping up all over the place. Those are fun to go to as an adult, so you get an adult beverage and you get to play like Final Fight.
It's really great that people like to fix these old arcade machines and get them back into working order. I actually talked to a guy when I was out in Portland for their gaming expo, Rewind by Design, and he designs and makes new arcade cabinets for old games, kind of like he did one for DuckTales that never came out, Legend of Zelda, what if that became an arcade cabinet? Very cool concept. So he's creating all these new arcades that people can enjoy. It's just great that so many people are passionate about arcades, and you know, it's not going to be lost to history, and there still are a few places you can go and enjoy a Ninja Turtles arcade, Street Fighter, whatever your favorite one is.
But again, being older and I work hard and I work for my money, I have decided to build myself an arcade. This is really a childhood dream come true for me. It's something that I've always wanted to do.
Went to Ground Control Arcade in Portland, and that's again another one that's just like out of nowhere you get that arcade experience. There's nothing like walking into an arcade. I mean, when we walked into this little building here and you turned all the machines on, it was just like we were all smiles, just like, this is amazing. So yeah, I miss arcades.
As a retro gamer, it's one of those things where we all loved arcades, but you know, when you went to somebody's house, they had a Nintendo, a Super Nintendo, a Genesis, a Game Boy. I don't think I ever met anybody in my childhood who had an actual arcade at their house. It was always the unobtainable dream. But I know still to this day it's not possible for many people, but myself doing this made myself my own little dream come true.
Well guys, I hope you enjoyed that video and maybe it brought back some childhood memories of going to the arcade. Feel free to leave in the comments down below what your favorite arcade machine is or experience. Big shout out to everyone in this video. Of course, there'll be links in the description down below if you want to check out their channels or what they do. Well, I gotta get back to gaming. Turtles is calling my name. Thanks so much for watching, guys. And as always, I'm RussLyman, and keep your world fun bit by bit. I'll see you next video. And I want to give a super shout out to all my Patreon supporters: Dan Buchanan, Joey Ellis, George Sandoval, Joseph Riviera, Nintendo, Joe Sheevy, David Apuzzo, Maynard, Brian Culpepper, TechWizX, Matthew Hannigan, One Up John, and everyone on my Patreon page. Link below if you want to join. And I'll see you later.